You're a Mongol general. You've witnessed unspeakable horrors. You've seen cities burn, heard the screams of thousands, watched rivers run red with blood. Nothing shocks you anymore. You've become numb to it all. But then, one day in 1220, standing in the ruins of one of the world's greatest cities, you watch your Khan, the man you'd follow into hell itself, give an order so methodical, so coldly calculated, that for the first time in your battle-hardened life, you feel something you thought you'd forgotten. Horror. Not at the violence, you're used to violence, at the system behind it, because what Genghis Khan did to his slaves wasn't just brutal, it was something far more disturbing. It was legal, it was organized, and it was justified by the very same laws that promised equality and justice for his own people. This is the story of how the boy who wore a slave's yoke became the man who built the largest empire in human history on a foundation of organized human trafficking. And the truly terrifying part? The system he created was so effective, so rational, so perfectly designed, that even today, scholars struggle to reconcile the progressive lawgiver with the architect of systematic dehumanization. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Genghis Khan's approach to slavery was infinitely more dangerous than simple barbarism. And you'll see why that matters for understanding power structures that still exist today. Let me take you back to the 1170s, to the frozen steppes of Mongolia. A teenager named Temujin sits in complete darkness, his neck and hands locked in a wooden kangu, a torture device designed for farm animals. The wood digs into his flesh. He can't lie down, he can't feed himself, he can't even scratch his face. Every night, he's dragged to a different tent, a different guard. He's not a person anymore. He's an object, a trophy, living proof that his captors have broken his clan. But here's what's fascinating. While most prisoners in his situation would be fantasizing about escape or revenge, young Temujin is studying. He's watching, learning, taking mental notes. He notices that the guards get drunk, that they grow careless, that on the night of a festival, when everyone is celebrating, discipline collapses completely. He waits, and on that night, he makes his move. But he doesn't just escape. He convinces one of his captors, a young man who'd shown him a shred of kindness, to help him. Even in chains, Temujin was already mastering the art that would define his empire, understanding what motivates people, and using that knowledge ruthlessly. But the kangu wasn't his first education in powerlessness. Years earlier, when Temujin was just 9 years old, his father Yassa was murdered, poisoned by rivals at a feast, the ultimate betrayal of steppe hospitality. And in that moment, everything changed. His father's clan held a meeting. These were people who'd sworn loyalty to his family, who'd shared food and fought battles together. And one by one, they looked at Temujin's mother, Hoelun, and her 5 young children, and made a calculation. These 6 mouths to feed were a liability now, a burden, so they left them, in the middle of winter, on the open steppe. Imagine being 9 years old and watching the only community you've ever known literally ride away from you. Watching them choose survival over loyalty. Watching them abandon a woman and 5 children to almost certain death. Hoelun kept them alive through sheer force of will. She taught them to dig for roots, to trap marmots, to eat things that weren't food but would fill a stomach. A clan leader's widow, reduced to foraging like an animal. But young Temujin learned something else during those desperate years. That every social bond, every sacred tradition, every oath of loyalty meant absolutely nothing when survival was at stake. The only thing that mattered was power. Raw, undeniable, terrifying power. The kind of power that made betrayal impossible because the cost was too high. These experiences, the abandonment, the enslavement, the escape, forged something unique in Temujin's mind. He didn't just want revenge, he didn't just want power. He wanted to rebuild society itself according to a completely different logic. Think about it. Traditional Mongol society was organized around family and tribe. Your loyalty was to your clan. But Temujin had learned the hard way that family would abandon you, that tribal bonds were worthless, that the whole system was fundamentally broken. So he began to envision something radical, a society where loyalty wasn't based on blood, but on law, where advancement wasn't based on who your father was, but on merit and absolute obedience, where betrayal wasn't just shameful, it was impossible, because the punishment was so swift and so certain that no one would dare. But here's the dark foundation of that vision. If you're going to reorganize society from scratch, you need to draw a line somewhere. You need to define who's in and who's out, who the laws protect and who they don't. And Temujin, the boy who'd been treated as less than human, who'd worn the slave's yoke, was about to draw that line in blood. The year is 1206. After decades of brutal warfare, Temujin has done the impossible. He's conquered or absorbed every major tribe on the Mongolian steppe. The constant raids, the blood feuds, the cycle of revenge that had defined Mongol life for centuries, it's over. A great assembly is called, a Kuriltai. Representatives from all the tribes gather by the Onon River, and there, under a white banner with 9 tails, Temujin is proclaimed Genghis Khan, oceanic ruler, or possibly universal ruler, depending on who's translating. But Genghis doesn't celebrate by launching foreign conquests. Not yet. His first act is something far more radical. He announces a new legal code that will govern this new nation, the Yassa. Now, when historians first study the Yassa, they're often genuinely impressed. For the 13th century, some of these laws were shockingly progressive. First, it became illegal to kidnap women. In a society where bride kidnapping was common practice, this was revolutionary. Women gained certain property rights. Adultery was punishable by death for both parties, equally. Second, all children were legitimate, even those born to slave mothers or concubines. In a world obsessed with lineage and pure blood, this was radical. It meant that a man born to an enslaved woman could, theoretically, rise to command armies. Third, religious tolerance was mandated. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and shamanists could practice freely. Genghis himself used to consult with religious leaders from multiple faiths. In an era of religious warfare, this was genuinely enlightened. Fourth, a meritocracy was established. Promotion in the military wasn't based on noble birth, but on ability. A shepherd could become a general if he proved his worth. And perhaps most tellingly, it became illegal for any Mongol to be enslaved. If a Mongol was captured, any other Mongol who encountered them was legally obligated to free them or face severe punishment. Reading these laws, you'd think Genghis Khan, the boy who'd worn the slave's yoke, was building a just society based on his own suffering. You'd think he'd learned empathy from his trauma. You'd be completely wrong, because buried in the Yassa were other provisions, quieter ones that revealed the true architecture of this new world. The same law that forbade the enslavement of Mongols, it explicitly allowed the enslavement of non-Mongols. The same law that mandated helping enslaved Mongols escape, it prescribed the death penalty for anyone who helped a non-Mongol slave escape. Religious tolerance? Absolutely. As long as you paid your taxes and provided tribute when demanded. And part of that tribute could be human. Do you see what he did? He didn't abolish slavery, he weaponized it. He created a system where all the progressive, enlightened laws applied exclusively to one group, Mongols, while everyone else existed in a legal grey zone where they had no protections whatsoever. But the Yassa did something even more fundamental. It completely dismantled the traditional tribal structure. Genghis reorganized the entire Mongol population and army into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. An Arban was 10 men, a Jaghan was 100, a Minkan was 1,000, and a Tumen was 10,000. Your commander wasn't your clan chief anymore. Your loyalty wasn't to your family, it was to your unit, and ultimately to the Khan himself. If even one man in a unit of 10 fled from battle, the entire unit would be executed. If one unit in a group of 10 units broke, all 10 units would be punished. This created a system of collective responsibility that made betrayal not just dangerous for you, but for everyone you cared about. And here's the genius and the horror of it. This system didn't rely on loyalty to a person. It relied on fear of a system. It was self-enforcing. It was impersonal. It was perfect. The first crack in the facade came early, with a governor named Korchi. Genghis had appointed Korchi to govern tribes in the forest regions of Siberia. By all accounts, Korchi was an effective administrator. The tribes paid their tribute. Order was maintained. But Korchi had a weakness. He started abducting local women for his personal harem. Not just one or two, dozens. He was using his position to build a private collection of enslaved women. Now, remember, the Yassa explicitly forbade the kidnapping of women. It was one of the most celebrated progressive elements of the law. The local tribes, pushed beyond their limit, finally rebelled. They captured Korchi and killed him. So what did Genghis Khan do? Did he praise these tribes for defending their women? Did he acknowledge that Korchi had violated the sacred law? Number. He sent an army to crush the rebellion. The message was clear. Korchi's crime wasn't the abductions. It was getting caught. It was causing instability. It was creating administrative chaos that required military intervention to solve. The Yassa protected women, Mongol women. Everyone else? They were in a different category entirely. And his generals, who'd been genuinely impressed by the progressive nature of the Yassa, started to understand that they'd misread the situation. The law wasn't about justice, it was about efficiency. It was about creating a stable, powerful Mongol nation that could project force outward without cannibalizing itself. But they didn't fully understand the implications.